In one of your pieces, and I don't recall which one it is, you'll probably know, you write about energy usage. You will never hope to understand the justification for the amount of energy Bitcoin consumes without first developing an appreciation for the fundamental role money plays in coordinating economic activity. What is money? How does it work? How should it work? What is its function in society? Now, this brings to mind for me what's called Brandolini's law, which is also known as the bullshit asymmetry principle. The amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude larger than it is to produce it. I feel like we have that challenge on pretty much every piece of FUD in Bitcoin, but it will be even more challenging because of the intensity, I guess, of the energy debate in the around the world and the politicization of it. How can Bitcoiners respond or educate about the truth of Bitcoin's energy usage in a simpler way than we are right now?
I mean, I think that to me, it's to not fight the debate where your opponent wants to fight the debate, right? Where they say that Bitcoin wastes energy, or that it's bad for the environment, and that quote that you just read, which was from I think my third or fourth, called "Bitcoin Does Not Waste Energy."
Yep.
It's that there is a reality that Bitcoin is hard to understand. Most people, myself included, before they come to Bitcoin, they've never questioned why people accept dollars or euros or yen. They've never really gotten to that first principle of money. So that you have to start with the baseline that they have no conception as to why Bitcoin is valuable or why it's a utility. They think that it's magic internet money, that's a Ponzi scheme. So any amount of energy, if you don't understand the fundamental value of Bitcoin, you could reasonably look at and say that is a waste of energy, or that consumes way too much energy, and whether or not on a fundamental basis consumption of any energy is a waste. That aside, that it renders people inequipped and unqualified to make an assessment of the justification of energy if they don't know the value of it. And so when they say, when it's the ESG crowd that says, this isn't good for the environment, or this isn't social good, you don't fight and say that the Bitcoin actually consumes renewables and that it's going to incentivize renewables. It's help that person understand why Bitcoin is valuable. Because if somebody understands why sound money is valuable and why a fixed supply of 21 million in a digital form, that you could basically take the physical property of scarcity and transmit it over a communication channel, if they fundamentally connect with why that idea is valuable and the degree to which Bitcoin is an innovation and a step function innovation in money, I promise you that person will have no gripes over any amount of energy that Bitcoin consumes. And so if we all recognize that seeing Bitcoin and for Bitcoin to become intuitive is not the easiest thing, that it's really to focus the debate there. And it's not to fight where the enemy wants to fight.
Vijay, do you have any thoughts there, like how we can approach, or how you think we should better approach the energy FUD debate? Because I do think it's going to be something that's more and more a challenge for Bitcoiners to overcome. I think the two biggest FUD pieces that we're going to have to fight are energy and government bans. So yeah, on the energy front, how can Bitcoiners best respond to it?
I was going to say, I have a slight disagreement about what you said about the asymmetry of refuting FUD. I think you're correct in the sense that the first time you refute FUD, there is asymmetry. It does take time to sit down and think about the fallacies and sort of explain cogently why an argument being presented is false. But the great thing is that that's a sunk cost. When you write it down, when you tweet about it, or when you write a Medium article, that's something that you could point people to. And I point people to Parker's articles all the time, and that's that cost that he's put in is really valuable, because now the cost of sort of debunking stuff is much lower for me. I can just point someone to one of his articles. This is a topic that I cover. The energy question is a topic I cover in quite a bit of detail in my book, because I think there are a number of ways to look at it. One of the ones, and I completely agree with Parker, that it's important to sort of frame the value proposition of Bitcoin. This is something that Satoshi Nakamoto said: Bitcoin's energy usage is justified by the utility it provides, by its existence, what is possible in the world that wasn't possible before. You definitely have to bring that up. I do think it is important to sort of get into the frame of reference of the people who are concerned about the environment, and think about it from their perspective too. I think that can be helpful. And I do think it's important to talk about the energy mix, and to point out that Bitcoin is actually, very green. It's not perfectly green, but it's very green compared to the alternatives that Bitcoin is competing against. So if you look at the environmental impact of gold, it's far more devastating than Bitcoin. Gold mining destroys the environment in which it happens. If you've ever seen one of these strip mines, they have a pretty horrendous impact on the local environment. Bitcoin mining is just computers in data centers. And typically they look for places where energy production, there's an overcapacity of energy production, and those typically tend to be places which are green sources like hydroelectric dams or geothermal sources. So I think it's important to think about that, and also to compare it to the fiat monetary system. I think it's important to dispel this idea that the fiat monetary system is costless or has no environmental impact. That's absolute nonsense. I mean, what is the environmental impact of having the US dollar? It's the credibility that comes from the military and the police system, and the cost that goes into that, because the nation state's money is only credible because there's military might to back it up, and to enforce it through the military and through the police. And that's massively costly. What is the environmental impact of the US military? It's gigantic. So I think it's important to point those kind of things out as well. I think the environmental mix, the energy mix of Bitcoin is going to become more renewable over time, because Bitcoin is a really great way of unlocking green energy sources in places where it would otherwise be uneconomic to develop those sources. I think people can go into places around the world where there is untapped energy and start using that, and eventually make those places potentially hospitable for people, because now you have energy infrastructure that had been incentivized by Bitcoin mining. So I think this is certainly an issue we can come back with very strong, cogent arguments, and certainly once we've invested the time to come up with these arguments, that sunk cost can be used, and we can reply back with these books and with these papers very quickly. And certainly we want to debunk the worst of these arguments, like the fact that Bitcoin uses a certain amount of energy per transaction. The whole idea of energy per transaction is so fallacious and bad that we want to have these cogent arguments. And that can range from everything from sound bites, from tweets, to articles, to books. I think we need everything, because people will be at different places in their curiosity. Some will want to hear that, or will need to hear that, soundbite, which will get them curious enough to go read the article, which then may get them curious enough to read a book. Sort of getting back to the beginning, I think you're right about there is some asymmetry, but once we've put in that cost of creating these rebuttals, I think we can copy and transmit them very quickly and cheaply.
No, I definitely hear you, but I think the asymmetry is in the amount of time it takes for someone to be convinced that FUD is incorrect. I mean, it's easy to hear Bitcoin boils the oceans, or Bitcoin uses as much energy as Ireland, et cetera, but to explain this complex system, and let's just, this complex idea, at least to understand Bitcoin mining and how it works, and why it's important, as Parker was saying, that is it takes us all quite a long time to really become convinced, at least it did for me, to it took months really of reading and watching and listening, and to understand that, like, this is answer all my questions, basically my concerns, and energy was certainly one of them when I was new to Bitcoin. So I'm just concerned that for adoption, especially by Bitcoiners who are going to really embrace the kind of cause that we all have, it's hard to overcome those ideas. And I'm also concerned about those ideas being politicized, and this, Bitcoin becoming a red and blue issue, which I don't think needs to be and shouldn't happen. And I think it's really important to talk to, especially the blue side, which is really latching on to a lot of this FUD and kind of spreading and putting it out there. It's important to be able to talk to the side, and trying to avoid it's inevitable, I guess, for it to be politicized, but trying to kind of front run that as much as possible is one of my concerns over the next 12 months.
Yeah, one comment I have quickly on that is that there's this interesting thing about how when people get into Bitcoin is almost related to how open-minded they are, and Bitcoin kind of rewards people who are open-minded enough to look into it and to find answers on their own without listening to FUD, to go sort of deep dive on their own. And those who are closed-minded, people like Krugman and Rubini, they're going to be lost in line to get on. I mean, it's going to be inevitable that they have to get on board because the whole world is going to be using Bitcoin. But they're essentially punishing themselves by being closed-minded. So I think it's important to have these resources and to create these resources. And the first people, the lowest hanging fruit, are going to be the people who are open-minded enough to come to this and try and figure it out on their own.
Yeah, I think Gladstein is doing a great job. Parker, just one last point. I think Gladstein's doing a great job of talking to that audience and really framing Bitcoin as a humanitarian, good for humanity in general, for human rights reasons. And I think that's important. And we'll speak to, different audiences outside the, Austrian economist crowd, for instance. Parker, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think one way on this point to really frame this as non-political is there's an idea that I talk about in Bitcoin Does Not Waste Energy, where I think at the highest level, someone really does have to understand why Bitcoin is valuable, like what money is, and whether or not in their perspective Bitcoin is viable as money, and why Bitcoin is a significant improvement in money. But then when it actually directly translates to this energy debate, I think that the right way to approach this is when people start to understand the money function within an economy, and that when they start to understand energy inputs and energy outputs and think about all other energy consumption, that they start to begin to have an appreciation for the fact that it's actually money which coordinates the activities that get everything to their home: clean water, power, beyond their home, healthcare, all of these very basic functions that rely on highly complex supply chains are ultimately coordinated by the economic of which we call money. And I often tell people to go, next time you go to the grocery store, sit in the middle of the grocery store and start to think about how all of those goods got there for you to mindlessly walk at the end of your day or beginning of your day through a grocery store and choose from thousands of options. That when you add it up, it's probably 100 million people that contributed to that, from like every supply chain for each individual good, all of the materials that go into the store, the telecommunications for the point of sale systems, that all of those ultimately were created and got to that point because some energy was extracted from the ground, moved downstream, refined into some end product that they could consume. Water waste management, electricity, telecom, everything. And that I frame it that way because if we don't have a working money, then we don't have very basic necessities that people have come to take for granted. And so when I think about the energy that Bitcoin consumes, energy to protect a monetary network and to reinforce a monetary network, I believe I have begun to frame as it is the highest and best use of energy, because it's not that the energy that Bitcoin consumes is going to people often say, if you estimated the current amount of hash rate in the Bitcoin network, it is the equivalent of approximately 18 million homes, or now that it's come down, so maybe it's 15 million. And people oftentimes say, well, that's 15 million other homes that we could power. And no homes have lost power because Bitcoin has consumed power. And it will actually be the case that homes will continue to be able to receive power, clean water, healthcare, because a functioning form of money exists. And then I kind of make it more tangible and land it for people. And it's like, look at Venezuela. Like, Venezuela is the perfect example because it is an oil-rich country. And if you look at the oil production in Venezuela, it's plummeting because they don't have a form of money to extract the oil from the ground. And what happens as a result? Supply chains break down, and they can't get healthcare and water and electricity to power their city centers. And wealth is literally destroyed. And that when people start to recognize that 85% of people in the world, 6 billion people, live in poverty, don't have access to a reliable form of money to coordinate resources to lift them out of poverty, that becomes, on a direct basis, the justification for energy, that you need that form of money to coordinate and marshal all other resources to be able to lift, and there's nothing political about that. But it also does require some understanding of both money and the fact that everything that we consume in our daily lives requires energy to be extracted from the ground. And that itself is a highly complicated process that requires money, that if you understand how complex energy supply chains are, that energy does not get extracted in the first place without money. And so it's like, basically, the energy that's used to consume the Bitcoin network is literally what will ensure that we have a stable form of money, which will ensure that all the power that goes to homes will continue to be there and that new homes will be powered.